first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. However, that's exactly what we are going to be doing today because it's another Throwback Tuesday where I review one of the movies that is on this poster. And according to this poster, Fight Club is one of the best 100 films of all time. So stick to the end of the video where I will have a random number generator pick which movie on that poster I will be reviewing next week. But this week it is Fight Club, which is directed by David Fincher, and he has made a ton of great movies, especially in the thriller genre. He's directed Seven, Gone Girl, Zodiac, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, tons of great movies. Now, my personal favorite movie of his has to be Seven, but Fight Club, it's a great movie. Honestly, it's definitely not my favorite, but there are definitely aspects I still enjoy, and along with having a great director, it also has a great cast. You have Edward Norton, who plays the narrator, who is unnamed, and he is who we follow throughout this film. And then we also have Brad Pitt, who plays Tyler, and we have Helena Bonham Carter, who plays Marla, and she does have an American accent in this film, so it's very odd, especially if you've seen some of her other films. I'm so used to her having an English accent, being kind of weird. I mean, she's weird in this film, but it works. So it's cool to see her with an American accent, but it did definitely throw me off. Now, this was my second time viewing Fight Club, and I have to say I enjoyed it a lot more seeing it the second time. The first time I watched Fight Club, I just wasn't really that into it. I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, I was like, he's setting things up, but I'm like not really following where it's going. And the second time, once you know the big reveal that happens in this film, it makes the whole film make a lot more sense, honestly. And it's fun picking out, like, where are characters looking? How is this big climax set up throughout the whole film? And watching it the second time, I was really focusing on that, and it was very enjoyable to watch. But the basic plot of Fight Club is you follow Edward Norton's character, the narrator, and he is a guy who is in the corporate world just doing his job. He doesn't really have any friends. He has severe insomnia, and he can't sleep. He has a job that he doesn't like, and he's just going through the motions, you know, buying that IKEA furniture, not really living. He doesn't have a community, so to say. And he then goes to different groups that occur for people who are going to die, specifically with different illnesses like cancer, things like that. And he finds in these groups, he's pretending he goes under different names, that he is able to go there, and then he cries, and it finally allows him to sleep. However, you then have Marla, who pretends to also be sick like he is doing, and she goes to these groups as well. But it then ruins it for him, and he can't cry when there's another faker, a pretender, who is in the midst like him, and he then is unable to sleep again and still suffers with insomnia. And then he meets a guy named Tyler, who is played by Brad Pitt, and they start a fight club, an underground fight club where men can be men, and they're fighting and doing all this great stuff. And it basically provides him a outlet where men can be men and work through their problems in a physical way and within their masculinity, so to say. And that is sort of how he is able to sleep and to live day to day. That is the very basic premise of Fight Club. I don't want to give away the big reveal, especially if you don't know it, but it's definitely worth giving it a shot because the build up to the climax is actually really enjoyable. And I do think this is one of Brad Pitt's best performances that I've seen a lot of his movies, but out of all of them I've seen, I think this is one of his best performances. I think he does a really good job of being the guy who is wild and crazy, where you have Edward Norton's character and you slowly see him going and becoming insane throughout this film. Now, I will say this film does tend to get kind of repetitive and slow, especially midway through the film. You're kind of like, can this wrap up? So there are some pacing issues, but you still just have to get through it. And I will say the climax, it works for this film. I think it could be better, but it does work. It does. It makes sense a lot for this film. And this film is basically a modern retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now, Fight Club, the movie, is based off the book called Fight Club under the same title, but I've never read the book, so based on just the movie, I would say it's a modern retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I had to read that book in high school, and it was honestly one of the worst books I've ever read. I hate it so much. I've anger towards that book. I hated it in school. Maybe if I reread it today, I'd think differently, but I absolutely hated it. Now, with Fight Club, I think the first time watching it reminded me so much of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that I did have a lot of anger and resentment because I was like, it's just so stupid, really? But rewatching it the second time, they do lead up to it. There's even a joke that references Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but it does make sense, and I do like how they are hinting to the big reveal throughout this whole film. So it was enjoyable, and it really is gritty and manly and violence, how they depict the fights and the blood, and just how they depict his insanity. And you are following a narrator who is unpredictable. You don't know if what you're watching actually is happening throughout this whole film because the narrator is unreliable, which does cause some confusion, which is enjoyable at the same time while watching this film. So overall, I really did enjoy Fight Club a lot more the second time watching it. I think this is definitely a film you have to rewatch to really grasp the full meaning and understand everything. And I do really like how they depict the themes in this film. Like, yes, there's a lot of masculine themes as well, but also a craving for community. You see him from the very beginning, Edward Norton's character, he wants a community somewhere he can just feel like he belongs because there's nowhere he really does belong. Now, eventually that morphs into the whole Fight Club and more in violence and masculine sort of things, but in the very beginning, he's just craving a community and people, which I think is a very relatable theme and how a lot of people feel, and their depiction of what it's like to be in corporate America, I think is also can be accurate as well, how everyone just hates their boss and, you know, kind of wants to fight their boss. So it does sort of relate to some desires that people would have, especially if you are in the working class. So overall, I think Fight Club resonates with a lot of people. There's a reason that it's quoted all the time. Now, even before I watched Fight Club, I would say the first rule about Fight Club is you do not speak about Fight Club. Like, I would say that to friends. It's just sort of within our natural vernacular. People say it all the time, even though they may not have seen the film. So it definitely did leave a cultural impact. So that is something that is also enjoyable about this film, that you're going to be like, oh, it's a reference from this film. I didn't know that. So overall, I would recommend Fight Club. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section down below. If you like Fight Club or if it's a skip for you, it's not your thing, down in the comment section down below. But now it is time to pick the next movie that we will be watching next week. And I just had the random number generator do it. And the next film is Groundhog Day, which I did see, but I saw like a long time ago. Honestly, I don't really remember much. But that is what I will be reviewing next week, so stay tuned for that and have a great day. Bye!